Just received a 67 Vibrolux in the mail for service. It's got 66 date codes on the power, the choke, and the output transformer. It's got 67 on the reverb. Let's pull the doghouse. 67 there. These atoms were put in sometime since 2016, going out by the date code. And so you would think that they would be fine. I'm not a fan of how they were installed. They use a combination of just pushing the new leads down into the old holes using solder as glue and wrapping the new leads around the old leads, which is also not optimal because that puts a lot of stress on the connections. You're trusting an old solder joint. Probably a lot of solder has pulled up beneath, and yeah, these don't have any support beneath the board. I use a little bit of silicone down there, and they're not the same size as the originals, so that foam is not going to do much from the top. And so let's look at these. They got a wrap. They got a wrap. They got nothing. Going in the hole, going in the hole. This one would have been going in the hole. Let me get this to focus right. So they just tucked that in there and soldered it and thought it would hold. And they cut it a little bit short and they trusted to the solder to work as glue. Well, solder does not want to be glue. And so probably the day this got back from being worked on, this would have come disconnected because it was very fragile. And so this amp has been working, quote, working, without a screen node filter cap. These are the reservoir, screen, phase inverter, preamp. So without a screen node, this entire amp would have been noisy and had too much gain, but very unpleasant gain, probably some sour out of tune notes, etc., etc. So I am going to recommend to the owner that I replace all 5 of these caps and do it properly. At the very least, this one needs to be replaced. Let's see what his budget and inclination allows. The inside overall looks very clean. We've got a grounded power cable added at some point, but they did not clamp the new larger diameter 3-conductor cable very well with the old clamp from the 2-conductor, and so it pulled out. I've just cut it off. I'm going to replace it with a better job. And I will confirm that the hot is fused, then switched, and the neutral goes directly to the primary. I'll confirm that later. But everything looks good in here. That bias cap, they did the same crappy thing with the wrap around the old leads that they did on the filter caps. It's not as critical on a bias cap because it has a lot less weight and mass. But as important as the bias cap is, and as easy as it is to replace it properly, that doesn't make me happy. 66 date code on that pot at least. All the pots seem to be original. Maybe not the treble. All right, all the pots except for the treble here are original. Look at the input jacks. Those look pretty good. That gap seems a little bit large. That may not be normally properly. Usually it's the higher gain input jacks that get metal fatigue over the years from being used, but this one looks like that is too far back. Normally this would be tighter if it were working properly. It's a subtle thing, but that one looks much better. I will find out. Let's see. All the chassis grounds look good. The owner mentioned that he'd had the tremolo disconnected, which does give a little bit more gain, and he wanted to know if I could make that switchable. I'm usually reluctant to change out an original part, but it's his choice. There are push-pulls I could use for that. It's going to depend on the pot used. This is the speed is a 3 meg, and this is going to be a 100K, so this would be the one I'd probably be able to do it with. But there's a small amount of space here. That's not my favorite mod to do. Some people will do it on the volume pot. I don't like to get that tremolo wiring, which is here now, over here near the signal. So I will talk to him about that. It gives a little bit more gain, but not that much, and there are other ways to get that gain if you want. You can just pull V1. Let's look at the board. I'm not sure whether these resistors are original or not. They've got the gold tolerance band. Most of them have, in this period, would have silver. But those solder joints look pretty factory. Maybe they were trying to get higher tolerance on the output. Replacement cathode bypass cap, again with the wrapping to the old leads. I'm always looking very closely at this resistor in Fenders because this is the one that often pulls out. Any horizontally mounted resistor is at risk as the board warps. There's a 220K down here that does the same thing commonly. More poorly replaced cathode bypass caps. Non-original cap here. That's the wrong value. It's supposed to be a 100 nanofarad, a 0.1 UF. This might have been done by whoever did the gain mod by taking out the tremolo. I'll talk to the owner about whether he wants that put back to stock or what. More poorly replaced cathode bypass caps. Got to replace treble cap there. More badly replaced cathode bypass caps. And these two plates and this slope resistor here in the normal channel, I know are not original. Again, they're the gold tolerance band, and in this amp, all the tolerance bands are facing the tube socket, the ones which are going vertically or diagonally, and this one's been flipped. That's nothing wrong in itself. It's, no one's going to see it when the amp's together, but those are also not very good solder joints, so that'll get retouched. As to the sockets and lead truss, they all look good. Let's see if I can get this to focus. That solder joint right there on that shared cathode looks like that wire here might be vibrating loose inside the solder joint a little bit. All this stuff will get revisited off camera. I can only do so much at once, but that's the kind of thing I look for. You can have all kinds of dry solder joints on these output sockets, preamp sockets rather. But overall, that looks pretty damn good. And I'll triple check all the RCA jacks and the speaker jacks and stuff. I already mentioned I'm going to check make sure the wiring's to code. It's got the original 1 watt screen grid resistors on both tubes. These look to be in pretty good shape. Usually these things have absolutely baked, and if it has not failed yet, it will. So I tend to replace these 1 watts with 3 watts, and instead of mounting them right over the top of the tube where there's a lot of convection heat rising from the tube itself, I put 3 watts off to the side, just away from the most direct heat. It's got the grounds made to the transformer mounting hardware, which started at some point in '66, as far as I can tell. That was a CBS move, made it amps faster to build. As I've shown in many previous videos, over time the chassis can deform from the weight of the transformer, and then you have an unreliable ground. So my preference is to wire it and solder it to chassis the way it was before '66, or before mid-'66. Takes a little bit longer, gives a much more reliable ground. That will be the owner's decision, because that does make it non-original, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's a funny world where you don't want to improve an amp because it'll make it non-original, even if the more valuable amps from the year or two before have the builds that you consider optimal. And this power cable is going to get replaced. But anyway, so far, everything looks very promising. This amp won't need a ton of work to sing. The board's very clean looking. Could still have some leaky DC, but we shall see what we shall see. There's the tremolo disc caps often fail on these, but right now at least the tremolo is bypassed anyway, so I'll report back once I get a chance to play things.